Welcome to another episode of Live from the Wish House with me, Cris Spinner. If you're a regular, welcome back. And if it's your first time, I'm happy you're joining us. My path profoundly changed when my son was diagnosed with autism. My marriage collapsed, and I began to develop my own Cris philosophies to navigate and thrive. I'm here to connect with you, to share and to learn, and together we can open our minds to creating the life you love to live. So please subscribe, like, share, and most importantly, comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feelings, and stories. So let's talk about parents. The parent who gives too much, the parent who doesn't set boundaries, the parent who feels completely responsible, the parent who can't bear the thought of their child feeling hurt, the parent who wants not to allow their child to make mistakes, the parent who wants to clean it all up, make it all well, the parent with a backpack of Band-Aids, the parent who feels if something goes wrong and they haven't alerted their child ahead of time, then it's their fault. The helicopter parent, the hovering parent. How do we turn into these kind of parents? I often think it's a mixture. Parents who feel this way, parents who parent this way, who act this way may have had nobody there to help them navigate, and they don't want to repeat that for their child. They don't want to repeat the feeling of feeling alone or feeling not cared for or feeling somewhat emotionally neglected. They want to give their child the best chance they possibly can, and they feel that they have the answers, so they're going to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself. Or you have a parent that's very controlling because they were controlled. And at the end of the day, they see some success as a result of that control and feel that's the way to go forward. Strong personality parents tend to push their child to get what they feel is best for their child. So in this episode, I'm going to give you some thoughts on why I think it's escalated over the past decade or two and how we can rein in the hovering. First and foremost, I think the onset of the phone in hand era has brought hovering parenting to a new level. So now I'm going to say the when I was a kid thing, but in all seriousness, when I was a kid, the constructs of society were a better fit for early teachable moments of independence. Now, why do I say that? And what do I mean by that? Well, we didn't have a phone in our hands when I was coming up the ranks. I was raised childhood in the 60s, entering teen years in the 70s. We did not have any way of getting in touch with our parents outside of our landline phone. And may I add that early on in my childhood, that was a rotary phone. The nostalgic rotary phone. I love them. So when we went to school, we were separated from our parent. In order to contact your parent, it had to be some sort of an emergency. And I am telling you, it had to be some sort of an emergency. Where I was in school, if you needed to contact home, you were taken to the main office. And in the main office at my school, it was the vice principal's office. And when I was thinking about this, I remembered she had whitish gray color hair with a blue rinse, an obvious blue rinse. And it's so funny because every single former student of that school remembers that. It is a childhood core memory, the blue hair. But trust me when I tell you, those visits to the blue hair vice principal's office using a phone to call your parents were far and few between. Even if you forgot your lunch, that wasn't seen as an emergency. The first option was to find a friend that you could share their lunch. And I went to school where there wasn't any cafeteria buy your lunch thing. That all happened after I left grammar school, as we used to call it. You were never allowed to call home if you forgot your homework, if you forgot a project, if you forgot a permission slip, unless it had a timestamp on it. If it was time sensitive, I remember they would let you call someone to bring in the paperwork. But in general, there was no calling home. I remember even if you were feeling unwell at school and it was the nurse's decision to send you home, it was the nurse that called your parents. Every once in a while, they would hand the phone over to you if you were present when the phone call was made so you could plead your own case to your parent. And if something happened while you were in school, if you were in an argument with a friend, or if you felt a teacher treated you unfairly, if you didn't get elected class president or didn't get the role in the school musical, or if you were chosen for the baseball team, or you did receive 5 stars on your essay, you had to navigate your emotions surrounding those events yourself. You had to get in touch with your own feelings. You had to share your own sadness or exuberance with a friend. And then somewhere, you had to store away those feelings that came with the great or sad thing until you got home to communicate that to your parent. And if there was a pervasive incident, something that was ongoing and causing you great distress, it was really then and only then that your parent got involved in your separate school life. Parents then seemed to advocate only when necessary. Okay, now we are connected to our children through phones. And trust me, as an educator who spent 39 years in the classroom, during the children have phones era, there is far more texting to parents than to friends. Parents are being texted for advice. Parents are being texted if there's an argument with a friend. Parents are being texted if the child feels they were being treated unfairly by a teacher. Parents are being texted when homework is forgotten, being texted because the child doesn't like what's on the lunch menu and wants a delivery of something different. Are you laughing? Trust me, this is a thing. Parents are being texted because of change in plans for after-school activities like personal play dates and vice versa. Parents are texting kids in the day to see how their day is going. Parents are texting kids in the day to tell them it's the grandparent that's going to drop off the cupcakes for the after-school bake sale. Parents texting kids to see how they did on the test they studied for the night before, or texting their children to double check on their child's after-school schedule. And I've even heard teachers say to students, text your parents. Parents have become the new best friends. Parents have become the 24/7 advice giver. Parents have become the handmaiden of their children's lives. And this kind of connection is addicting for both parties. And after a while, the parent sees their job as advocate in all situations, as fixer, manager, director, instructor. We used to say chief cook and bottle washer. And it leaves the child dependent way after the appropriate age of dependence. And make no mistake, a child that is freed from the task of navigating everyday life is not going to be able to do it well in their 20s and in their 30s. How many times do you hear adult children say, I couldn't live without my parent? That shouldn't be a thing. The desire should be to live alongside. I have so many friends who dread empty nest syndrome and secretly or not so secretly crave grandchildren. Now, while that's a natural desire, many times I see it as a subconscious way of opening the door again. Of course, it's not to say you don't want to see a full, healthy relationship and being in existence with different generations in your family, but the key words here are full and healthy. Your children should have friends to rely on. If they choose to have a partner, they should have partners on whom they rely, while you, the parent, falls into the role of sage, wisdom-filled parent, just like the parents in a Hallmark movie. So many people that I know do not embrace the empty nest. And it reminded me, there used to be a funny commercial on TV with the parents waving goodbye to their last child out of the house as they embark on college or marriage. And they have the tissues that they're dabbing their eyes And as soon as the kid is out of sight, they slam the door and run into the child's room and start turning it into their own new den or rock and roll studio. The complete remodel is happening while they're jumping for joy. Now, advertisers know that that's funny. Advertisers know that intrinsically we're supposed to feel that way. It's not a dismissal of your children. It's an embracing of the next passage, of the next era, as Taylor Swift says. You're no longer responsible in this era for the everyday in and out. You're free to embrace your new independence while they embark upon theirs. But then this symbiotic meshing of these two phases of life can occur as it relates to independence, and that's not optimum for parent or child. I oddly learned this hard lesson at the most difficult part of my life. And I believe I've mentioned this anecdote before, but it bears mentioning again. When my autistic son was 16 years old and had been in an emotionally dysregulated crisis for quite a while, he was admitted to a hospital for 2 weeks while a team of doctors working with our team looked at his overall health, physically and emotionally, and then decided what interventions would help going forward. Now, at that time, and still in many places today, our autistic children are admitted to the psychiatric section of our hospital, where other young people are being treated for other mental health issues. The population of the children is very different from an autistic child, especially a child who's limited in their verbal expression. I got to tell you, I couldn't cope with the whole thing. I just couldn't cope with the whole thing. I couldn't imagine, number one, my son out of the house. He had never been out of my house except for one overnight at a fun camping experience with a special needs therapeutic summer camp that he attended when he was 10. I couldn't imagine my son being out of the house, let alone in a place where I felt he couldn't fend for himself verbally or otherwise. Now, if you've heard my podcast episodes on my journey with Anthony, you will know that it ended up being okay. But while I was going through it, I was beyond distraught. And I remember very clearly that in a hysterical moment of despair, a friend said to me, "Cris, you often express faith in a higher power. And if you believe in that higher power, then you have to remind yourself that Anthony's path is protected by that higher power. And remember that Anthony's path is not your path." And she went on to give me the analogy of riding in a car and imagining that I was in one car, in one lane, and Anthony was in the other car, in the parallel lane. And although we were driving together, headed for the same destination, we were not in each other's lanes. And as hard as that was for me to hear, that stuck with me. Raising a child with a disability or a differing ability, you do become even more attached, even more immersed in the everyday life of your child because your advocacy and your need to manage is almost extreme and extremely needed. But I knew she was correct. And I worked so hard on trying to see it that way. And I have to say, I pretty much succeeded. And this is why I say to friends and people all of the time, if I can do it, you can do it. I watch people hover over their adult children's lives 100% more than I do my son. I work my own program on relating to him as an adult, always providing him with as much independence as I possibly can. And he is someone I can justify hovering around. Most people would understand that, but I don't do it. And I don't do it because I know, every single person on this planet is here to do their own work, to live their own life authentically. And they're not going to be able to do it if they have a constant director. So now a couple of quick tips, a little Chrislosophy on how not to be a hovering parent. Number one, catch yourself. Don't make your child the center of your world. Take steps to retain your own identity, even through your parenting years. Don't neglect your own interests. So keep your book club going. All right, you're busy and it might have to be once every 2 months instead of once a month. Just tailor your activities to fit your lifestyle, but don't let them go. Number 2, enjoy your child's stories. Enjoy your child's activities, but don't try to change the narrative of things. Make yourself a pact that you'll only step in to save the day when absolutely necessary. Other than that, allow there to be a little bit of give and take between your day and your child's day. Model the independence. Enjoy their funny story about the silly thing that happened at today's baseball practice, and then share your funny story, what happened while you were grocery shopping. Resist interjecting their moment of all the kids laughing inappropriately during the baseball coach's directions because he mispronounced a name might make your child look disrespectful. Pick your battles. Number 3, don't take it personally if your child sees things differently than you. There's no need to get them to agree with you. Now, if we're talking about a child who is older, this would be a great conversation to dig deeper into who they are. And the same can happen for them. They should see who you are and not be told who they have to be. As a parent, you have the emotional upper hand and you're going to know if something needs serious looking into or intervention. But other than that, get to know the person that you've been gifted to parent. Number 4, don't share comparisons of your kids to their friends. Using their friends as examples of things that are good and not so good only show your child that you're watching and that you and other people are judging. Just stick with your own kid, celebrate the successes, help them through the failures, encouraging both. Number 5, don't place your worrisome ideas on your child. And because a lot of times those ideas are coming from your own experiences and insecurities. Your child comes home and says they want to try for the lead in the school musical, and you remember your experience feeling less than when you sang your selection at your audition. So catch yourself before you say, well, maybe you should simply try out for being in the musical in general without focusing on the lead. Catch yourself from saying, oh, do you feel that confident about your singing that you could go through that experience? Better to say, that sounds great. What can I do to help or encourage you? And then add on, but don't forget, honey, whatever role you receive, I'm going to be super proud that you took the risk to achieve something you want. Let your kids fail. Better to discuss the failure with them than try to prevent the failure from happening. It's so hard. But Paul Simon tells you in all of his wisdom, you got to learn how to fall before you learn to fly. And mama, it ain't no lie. Before you learn to fly, you got to learn how to fall. Anthony and I love the Peanuts gang, the Charlie Brown characters. And when Anthony was little, we used to watch all the Charlie Brown videos. In fact, in those days, there were VHS tapes. There was one video where there was a vehicle called a hovercraft in it. Oddly enough, it was the first time I heard the term, and Anthony always remembered it. A hovercraft. It's a vehicle that's capable of functioning everywhere, in the land, in the water, in the mud, and the ice. Today's advice, let's get our kids some protective weather clothing and leave the hovercraft to Charlie Brown. See you next time at the Wish House.